What if the most powerful nations today don't have flags, just apps? Google has more users than any government has citizens. Meta can influence elections without ever appearing on a ballot. And Amazon hosts the digital infrastructure of entire countries. These companies don't just sell services, they shape economies, write rules, and decide who gets to speak, trade, or even exist online. They've got borders, currencies, and control, but no constitutions, no elections, no accountability. In this episode, we break down how platforms became power structures, acting like governments but operating like corporations. It's not just about what they own, it's about what they rule and whether we are living inside something we never meant to join. Imagine waking up in a country with no land, no flag, no government, but with billions of citizens. A country where the economy runs on ads, the laws change without warning, and the borders are controlled by algorithms. Sounds like science fiction, but you are probably already living in one. Because today, platforms like Google, Meta, Amazon, and Apple don't just run websites, they run worlds. Let's break that down. Meta has over 3 billion monthly users across its apps. That's more than the population of any country. Google processes over 8.5 billion searches a day. Amazon's cloud services power a massive chunk of the internet. These aren't just tools we use, they are systems we live inside. And the deeper you look, the more it starts to resemble a kind of digital nationhood, one that's expanding, unregulated, and quietly rewriting the rules of power. These platforms have their own economies. Think about it. They issue currency in the form of ad credits or cloud credits. They set the rules of trade, who can buy visibility, how creators get paid, what products are shown. Small businesses rise and fall based on algorithm changes they never get to vote on. Entire industries have been reshaped to fit inside these ecosystems. If a startup doesn't rank on Google, or if a brand can't afford Facebook ads, it might as well not exist. They also govern, not through elected officials, but through terms of service. They ban content, suspend accounts, and enforce speech guidelines. And while some of that moderation is necessary, it's also completely opaque. One policy change, one flag post, and you could lose your income, your audience, your digital identity. There is no due process, no right to appeal, just an automated message or maybe nothing at all. In the physical world, we would never accept that level of unaccountable authority. Online, we live with it every day. These companies also have borders, not physical ones, but digital fences. Some of them are open, others tightly controlled. Apple's ecosystem, for example, is notoriously closed. If you want to build inside it, you follow their rules, use their tools, and give them a cut of your revenue. Platforms control which apps get through their gates, how they behave, and whether they survive. It is the kind of border control that would make old empires jealous. And let's not forget surveillance. These digital nations track your movements, your purchases, your thoughts, not for security, but for profit. Your behavior is harvested, analyzed, and sold to advertisers. It's like living under constant observation, but instead of police, it's pixels. And instead of punishment, it's persuasion, nudging you toward the next click, the next buy, the next scroll. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. These platforms don't just shape individuals, they shape entire societies. Elections are influenced by what gets promoted or buried. Cultural norms shift based on what goes viral. Protests get organized on apps owned by billionaires. News gets filtered not by journalists but by machine learning models. That's not just power, that's governance without consent, without oversight, and often without borders. What's wild is that these platform nations don't declare themselves. They just emerge slowly, one product at a time. And now they're here, not replacing governments, but operating alongside them. Sometimes in competition, sometimes in collusion. And the rest of us are caught in the middle, trying to figure out what it means to live in a world where your primary identity, income, and community might all exist inside a company's app. Let's talk about power. Traditional nations have always held certain kinds of power: the ability to tax, to regulate, to enforce laws. But platform nations operate with a different kind of leverage. They don't need armies. They have infrastructure. They don't need to pass laws. They update policies. And they don't need to raise flags. but they already have your attention, your data, and often your wallet. What makes this even more complicated is how intertwined real countries have become with these platforms. Governments rely on social media to communicate with citizens. Politicians campaign on apps they don't own. National health systems use Google Cloud. Schools assign homework on Microsoft Teams. In some cases, public services now depend on private infrastructure. That's a quite shift in sovereignty, one that didn't come with a vote, just a login screen. Now, add in economic influence. Apple and Amazon have more cash on hand than many countries' GDPs. They negotiate tax breaks the way diplomats negotiate treaties. They decide where to open offices, where to build data centers, and in return, governments bend over backwards to stay on their good side. These companies aren't just players in the global economy, they are the terrain. And it doesn't stop at money, there is cultural power too. The content we consume, the music, the movies, the memes, they all flow through platforms that decide what gets recommended and what gets buried. That shapes taste, shapes identity, shapes language. On TikTok, every cultural trends rise and fall in a matter of weeks. On YouTube, creators become more influential than legacy media outlets. When a platform changes its algorithm, it doesn't change traffic, it changes what stories get told. What's strange is how little transparency there is around all of this. We don't really know how content is ranked. We don't know how certain videos take off or why some posts disappear. The systems are proprietary. The data is locked away. And the feedback loop is so tight that even the platforms sometimes don't understand how their own algorithms behave at scale. It's like living in a country where the laws are invisible and the police are automated, and no one can explain how the system works. Meanwhile, accountability is blurry. If a platform decision leads to harm, say a false claim goes viral and incites violence, who is responsible? The user who posted it, the algorithm that amplified it, the company that built the system, or the regulator who didn't step in? In most cases, the answer is no one. And that's the problem. These platform nations have real impact, but almost no clear governance structure. No courts, no elections, no separation of powers, just policy teams, public statements, and sometimes a vague promise to do better next time. And yet, we rely on them, not just for convenience, but for basic participation in modern life. Job applications, education, health advice, friendship, dating, all routed through platforms. Log out and you don't just disconnect from entertainment, you disconnect from society. This is a new citizenship. You didn't sign up for it. You probably didn't read the terms, but you are already living inside it. Your rights are shaped by platforms. Your reach, your reputation, your relevance, all shaped by design choices you didn't get to vote on. And because these companies operate globally, they're often more powerful than the laws of any one country. If a platform decides to ignore a government, there is not always much that government can do. The result, a new kind of asymmetry, where tech companies act like nations but without the responsibilities of one. They have borders, populations, economies, and influence, but no constitution, no representation, no duty to protect, just product roadmaps and shareholder reports. If it sounds like the world has flipped upside down, that's because it kind of has. We used to think governments made the rules and companies followed them. Now, in many areas of life, it's the other way around. Platforms update their terms of service and governments scramble to respond. Companies design systems that shape billions of lives, and most of us don't even know who is making those decisions, let alone how. But here is the thing, there isn't a conspiracy. It's not some shadowy takeover. It is the outcome of a world that moved fast, valued innovation over regulation, and handed over digital infrastructure to whoever built it first. These platforms don't steal power, they were given it by users, by markets, by institutions that outsourced more and more of their public role to private tools. It happened gradually, and now here we are. So, where does that leave us? For one, we need to stop thinking of these companies as just tech firms. They are not just making apps, they are governing ecosystems. They are shaping norms. They are mediating what billions of people can say, do, and see. That kind of influence needs checks and balances, not just apologize after the fact. Some governments are trying to catch up. They're passing digital laws, threatening fines, breaking up monopolies. But regulation is always slower than innovation. By the time a rule is passed, the platform has already changed. And because these companies operate across borders, even coordinated regulation is hard. What one country bans, another might promote. What one court orders removed, another might protect. There is no consistent rulebook, just overlapping pressures and fragmented control. But here is what's promising: people are paying attention. Engineers are building decentralized networks that don't rely on any single company. Activists are fighting for digital rights, for privacy, for transparency, for the ability to move freely across platforms without losing your data or identity. Some creators are even forming platform cooperatives where users share ownership. These are small steps, but they point to something bigger, a reimagining of what digital space could be. And maybe that's the shift we need, to stop treating platforms like governments and start demanding that they act like ones with responsibilities, transparency, and consequences. Or better yet, to build systems that actually reflect democratic values from the ground up. Systems where users have a say, where communities shape the tools they depend on, where participation doesn't mean surrendering control. Because in the end, this isn't just about the future of tech. It's about future of how we live together. If platforms are going to act like nations, then we need to decide what kind of nations we want them to be and whether we are willing to stay citizens under rules we never agreed to. In the next episode, we will begin a new series with a question that's everywhere right now. Is AI smarter than us? But maybe the real question isn't about intelligence, it's about what we have misunderstood all along. Thanks for watching.